Hey everyone, this is Demetrius from Demetrius Dowdell Success Academy. This is Coach D joining you live right now. Hey everybody. This is Coach D joining you live. How is everybody doing on this beautiful Thursday afternoon? Uh, okay, let me just make sure everything is ready here. I hope everybody's enjoying their Thursday. I really do. Getting ready for the weekend. Getting ready for Friday, the weekend. Yay. We all love that. Let me just make sure everything is showing. Okay. Just trying to give people a chance to come on so that we can go ahead and get started. And as usual, the first thing that I want to do is I want to thank you for the views. The views on the videos, once again, they do really good. So I do feel confident that the information is definitely getting out there. I do feel very confident about that. And just a few housekeeping things to remember is I want you to remember to please share. So if you know someone that wants to start a business in the healthcare industry, please share. This is an opportunity for them to come on and to be able to type their questions into the comment section, and I will answer their questions for them so that they can have a better understanding of how to start their home care agency. Now, I do this for two types of senior care models. So if they're looking to start a home care agency, which you actually go into the home and you provide care to senior citizens in the comfort of their home, then that's one type of model. And then the second type of models are if you're looking to actually keep them, which is more like a assisted living type model, where you're looking to actually keep individual. I shouldn't say keep, they're not children, to actually provide care in a home environment where the senior citizens will stay with you in that environment, and you will be you become their caregiver to be able to provide care for them. And when I mean caregiver, that doesn't mean that you physically have to be their one-on-one caregiver, but you will be responsible for either one, being their caregiver if you decide to take on that role directly, or you will make sure that it is coordinated, the care is coordinated, meaning you will hire individuals to be able to work for you to assist the clients that are enrolled in your either in your home care business or that are living at your assisted living facility. But next Thursday, we won't really talk too much about assisted living facilities or that type model, because that's going to be next Thursday. Tonight, we're going to be looking at the questions about the home care models. And so I do encourage you that if you know someone that is interested in starting their business, starting a home care agency, please share. Remind them that they can come on this live, that they can come and type their questions directly into the comment section, and I will answer their question right now on the live. Or if they choose, then they can choose to either email me at success.ddowdell at gmail.com, or they can choose to log on to on Demetrius Dowdell Success Academy, and then they can inbox me and let me know, what the questions is that you would like to ask. I do encourage you to join the live because you are able to get your question answered firsthand, so that that you can ask your question that's specific to what your needs are in reference to doing your research on trying to find out what's best for you to get your home care model started. So in any event, I do always try to leave a tip because, once again, I don't like to waste your time, and I don't like my time to be wasted. So I do leave a tip usually on these lives, so that way you will be able to still get some very important information out of it. But if you want your specific question answered, then those are the 3 ways that I mentioned to you that you can specifically get your question answered. Now this video will be, I usually load it to my Facebook page, so it'll be here on Demetrius Dowdell Success Academy, and I'll probably end up posting this one also to my YouTube page, which is Demetrius Dowdell Success Academy on YouTube. So it'll be in both places, so that way you'll still be able to get some of the information, because like I say, I always leave you with some insight. So with that being said, I'm going to go ahead and get started. I've given everyone enough chance to be able to come on if they would like to come on and get started. If not, they can join us, or they'll be able to see the replay. So nevertheless, once again, I am Coach D, and I am the owner and founder of Demetrius Dowdell Success Academy. And what we do is we are a business consulting, coaching, development, small business development firm that actually helps individuals that are looking to start their business in one of those models that I talked about, either the home care model or the assisted living model. If you're interested in starting a home care business or healthcare business, in one of those particular business models, then we help provide workshops, tools, coaching, and consulting sessions that help you get started. So I do have experience with being able to help you in regardless of which state that you live in. I do work one-on-one with business consulting or business coaching with clients that are from everywhere. So as long as they are willing to put forth the work into it, put forth the effort, then our services, they can utilize our services so that they can get their business started. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and get started. So one of the questions that I usually get frequently asked, since I don't have, let me check and make sure I don't have any comments right now. So one of the things that I do get frequently asked whenever I am working with clients individually or doing one-on-one consulting or one-on-one coaching with them, one of the common questions is, do I have to operate out of a home office or a commercial office? Good question. Very good question. So to answer that particular question, let me just clarify the difference between what we look at as a home-based office and what we look at as a commercial kind of brick and mortar type office. The home-based office is just like what it says. It is based out of your home. You can run your business out of the comfort of your home. Keep in mind, there are a couple of factors that we're going to get into here shortly. That's going to kind of give you some ideas on which one is best for you, home-based business or a commercial business. So right now, I'll lay the foundation for both. Back to the home-based business. Home-based office. Just like it says, it's a home-based office. There's usually a designated area within your home that you have deemed and designated as your workspace, where you have set up like an office, is ready to do business. You're doing business here in this designated area in the comfort of your home, where you are conducting business related activities. Okay, that is a home-based office. Now, when we look at a commercial office, or what's called sometimes like a brick and mortar type office, when we look at that, we're looking at a piece of property that is zoned commercially. It can be a building, it could be a house that's on a front street that is zoned as for commercial use. A lot of times you may see it in certain neighborhoods. You might go in and you may say, oh, that house, it looks like a house, but it's an office. That's because it's zoned for both residential or commercial. So they can either use that space to turn it into a residential living where they themselves can live or someone can live, or they can get it zoned for business use where it is zoned and looked at for as commercial property. So it is zoned to do business, commercially, to do business out of that particular building. And so you can use those type of buildings, or you can use buildings that are actually located inside of bigger leasing spaces, where you will see buildings that have several floors where you can rent out one of the spaces on one of their floors, their commercial spaces, and then you can open and conduct your business that way. So those are two different things that you will be able to look at depending on which model that you look into. We're going to get into the two different types of home care models here in just a second. Now, remember, with your home care, with your home-based office, the overhead, meaning the overall expense that it takes to operate that particular business is usually going to be lower, because you don't have the overall expense of paying the utilities for that commercial space separate than what you're already paying for your home. And you can most definitely talk to your accountant, because your accountant, I am not an accountant. Let me just make that very clear. I'm not an accountant. I don't play like I'm an accountant, and I don't give accountant advice. However, I can tell you, by having several businesses and have dealt with our personal accountant for years, which we have a very personal relationship with our accountant. He's been assisting us for years with our businesses, so he keeps us on the straight path with that when it comes to that. But if you work closely with an accountant, they can definitely tell you how your home-based office can definitely give you tax write-offs, and what you can use to be able to definitely count towards making sure that at the end of the year you are getting credit back for having that office within your home, and just going through the different tax write-off that you can definitely get from there. So there is benefits for having a home office. Again, when we look at the two different types and how it's regulated, then that's going to better answer the question on which one can you have in order to run and operate your business. Now, again, you don't have the big overhead that you will have when you look at a commercial space. When you look at running and operating your office from a commercial space standpoint, then you are going to look at more expenses. It's going to be a separate leasing expense that's going to come along with, of course, leasing that space or that building. There's, of course, it's separate utilities that's going to be separate from your personal expenses. So you're going to be looking at the utilities of that building, depending on the type of lease you're going to enter into. You're going to may or may not be responsible for some additional fees, such as repairs or janitorial services. It just depends on the way that you go into the leasing contract and what's included within the leasing per month and what's not included in the leasing per month. And just remember that if it's not included in that commercial leasing per month, then that is now an additional expense that you will need to add on per month in order to operate that business. So now that we have an understanding of the two different types of offices, whether it's a home-based office or whether it is a commercial-based office, now we can go into explaining the two different home care models and how you can determine whether you need a home-based office or whether you need a commercial-based office. Now, when we talk about the two home care agency models, one, we have the homemaker and companion agency, okay, which is usually, of the two models that we're going to talk about, this one is the most simplest to start. Don't take it being the most simplest to start without challenge, okay? Because there are some challenges into running this business, because you do have to run this business a certain way, especially when you're doing business with other vendors and you're getting contracts with these other vendors. So there is a level of expectation that that I think a lot of individuals underestimate when they get ready to go into this type of business. They hear that, oh, this one is the simplest to start, but then when they're getting connected with other vendors, or they're doing business on different levels, then they begin to understand, whoa, this is it's a little bit more to this, because there's a certain level of expectation in order for you to keep that funding, to be able to provide these services. Then there's a level of expectation that goes beyond the easiest to set up. We won't go into that right now, but it is the most easiest of the two models to set up initially. And the Acurity is very low risk. It is a very low risk business. And the reason that it's a low risk is because under most states, let me put it this way, under most states, it does not allow you to do hands-on, meaning it does not allow you to perform what's known as activities of daily living for the client. So you're not adding that personal care piece into that. Most states looks at homemaker companion services as no personal care involved for the most part. So if the state recognizes that it's a homemaker companion agency, it most likely is going to recognize it as non-personal. So you're not providing any personal hands-on care. You're not doing any bathing. You're not doing any feeding. You're not doing any toileting. You're not doing any dressing for the resident that's considered activities of daily living. So your role, the primary role of the homemaker companion agency is just as such. It's to provide companionship for the client. You can also provide medication reminders. There's a lot of different things that you can provide within your organization that does not deal with personal care hands-on with the client. Okay, now that brings us to the second model, which is what's called it can be referred to as a non-skilled. Okay, which is the most recognized and legal term for it, or some states recognize it as what's called a non-medical home care agency. And what this basically does is you can provide the home care. You can provide the personal care aspect to this. So the acuity level is just a little higher. The risk is a little higher because now you are actually having hands-on with the client, where you're providing that level of care that provides a higher risk, because now you're looking at the individuals that you will need to hire will now begin to require a certain level of certification or licensure to be able to provide the services in the home setting. Okay, so when you look at the acuity that goes along with these two different types of agencies, brings us to the question of how is it regulated. Okay, how is it regulated? That becomes the key factor in whether you can even consider opening, using your home office versus your commercial office, because depending on the way it's regulated within your state will determine whether you can run this business from your home-based office, or whether you would actually have to get what is called the commercial or the brick and mortar type of office space. Now, with that being said, when you look at the risk that's being involved in the types of services that you can provide, the higher the acuity, meaning the more that the client is going to require, the different type of skill levels that you can now hire within your agency, means that it's going to be regulated more frequently and a little bit more heavily than the homemaker companion agency. Because in your homemaker companion agency, you do not have to necessarily hire an individual with a certain certification or a particular licensure in order to provide non-personal care to an individual. So, with that being said, the higher the risk that's involved, the higher the acuity or the type of residence that you can now begin to provide services for, the more regulation that's going to be associated with that, meaning that the more accountability is going to be expected for you to be operating out of a commercial type building where the regulatory board has more access and can have more frequent access to that particular space. So that goes along with that. With that being said, that is a determining factors on whether you can run a home base versus a commercial. So when you are looking at which type of business model that you want to start, whether it's a homemaker companion agency or whether it is a non-skilled home health agency, you know to factor in that there is going to be a little bit more cost that may be associated with starting one versus the other. Okay, now that that is clear, what type of things that you will need, what type of things that you will need or supplies that you will need to be able to make sure that your business is set up the right way? Well, whether you begin a home office or whether you start a commercial office, use a commercial office. But basically, across the board, you're going to need pretty much the same thing. You're going to need your desk. You're going to need your chairs, your supplies. You're going to need locked file cabinets. Okay. You're going to need printers, scanners. You're going to need fax. Whether you use hardwired fax machines or if you actually do anything that's over the phone, that's digital faxing. Either way, you'll need these types of things, because even if you run this office from your home, you have to remember that even you can get regulatory visits there at your home based office. You can have regulatory visits there, and when you do get regulatory visits there, they're expecting that there's going to be a designated area where you're going to be conducting this as a business, because at the end of the day, this is a business. So you'll need to be conducting this as a business. You'll need to be handling client information in a private manner so that it is protected and it's just not accessible to anyone that walks into your home. So when they're looking at this office needs to be set up just like an office, just like if you were in a commercial building and you had a desk, you had your office chair, you had your supplies on your desk, you had file cabinets. You're going to need all of these things, all of this equipment in your home and your commercial business, because the expectation is for you to be running and conducting a business, not just a free-for-all to basically, doing whatever you want to do. You need to be conducting this as a business. The other thing that I need to stress to you is having a laptop. So if you're going to either run a home office or if you're going to run a commercial office, you need a laptop. The reason I am stressing this is because there's a lot of work involved with a home care business. There's a lot of work. You'll need to be able to send effective communication to your team. You'll need to be able to. There's a lot of paperwork that's involved with this. There's a lot of forms that you will need to create for your business. There's a lot of things that will need to go into your business where you're going to need more than just a mobile device. Okay, mobile devices are great. However, they don't do everything. Here's one of the things that you really need to take into consideration using a mobile device and versus a laptop. When you're filling out a lot of your credentialing information, sometimes the view on the mobile site is not as it doesn't show you everything that the laptop or the desktop version will show you. So you could be really missing a lot of pieces of information, and you can end up having your credentialing application rejected because you did not see all of the drop down options, or all of the information did not show up that needed to show up in order for you to be able to fill out your credentialing packet correctly. I'm just checking here for comments. Okay. Because you did not fill out your information correctly. What you'll find is you're filling out what you're seeing online. However, what you're not filling out is all of that showing within that application screen. So it's very important. I always advise clients that I'm working with when I do coaching or consulting with them. Make sure that you have a laptop or a desktop, one or the other. That view is going to give you a more accurate view, and it's going to save you overall. It's going to save you overall on some of the issues that you're going to have when it's time to fill out these applications. Okay? So it'll save you in the long run. So with that being said, that takes me to my very, very last point to how can you substitute meeting space for when you're operating a home office? That's another good question that I usually get. So if you're running a home office and you are versus a commercial lease space office, you want to keep in mind and keep in consideration that when there are certain times that you are going to have to meet with your staff, there are certain times that you are going to need to meet with families. So when you're trying to make the decision, which one do I want? Do I need to run my office? One, I do have a choice. Either the homemaker companion homemaker and companion agency, you have a choice at this point. In most states, you have a choice. Most of them you can run out of the comfort of your home. On the other hand, your non-skilled home health agencies, it is regulated that you must have an office space for the most part in most states. You have to have a leased commercial office space in order to be able to run this business. Okay. In both models, you have to keep under consideration the meeting space. When you are in a commercial, you don't run into this as much because most of the time there's private areas in your commercial space where you can meet with your you can meet with clients, you can meet with their families, you can meet with your staff that you're potentially going to hire. You can also meet with your current staff so that whenever there's information that needs to be discussed that's confidential and specific to that particular client, you have a designated area where you can be able to talk freely and you all can have a meeting about this type of information. However, if you are in a if you are running a home-based office, such as in usually that business is going to entail a homemaker companion agency, you're going to run into those same dynamics. You're going to run into situations where one, the clients may need to meet with you, two, their families may need to meet with you, or three, your staff or prospective staff may need to speak with you. In that case, there are alternatives or some short-term workarounds that you can you can utilize in order to be able to get around that if you're not operating a commercial space. So if you're operating, and this is specific to a home-based office, if you are not discussing any type of confidential information about that client, maybe you're having a meeting on showing up for work on time or work expectation, as long as it does not long as you are not discussing client information, then you can either look at the option for Zoom meeting. So you can set up Zoom so that you can have your operations meeting or whatever you need to talk to your staff about. Or you can look at local libraries if you want your whole team to meet at one time, and if you don't want them coming to your home-based office, which most of the time I can tell you now, I'm just telling you from my perspective. No, I don't conduct meeting if I'm at my home office and I'm using my home office for a particular type of business. I usually don't schedule meetings to happen from my home-based office. So the tips that I'm giving you now are ones that I've actually used in the past that have been very successful. But keep in mind, if you're not discussing client information there in a public area, you can use the library, you can use your local Starbucks, you can use your local Dunkin' area where you can actually, they have little meeting rooms now where you can actually go and you can rent out for just a short period of time, and you can actually conduct a staff meeting there, and it's inexpensive. It's not very expensive. It's inexpensive when you can rent out, and you can have a conference room where you can discuss some things that you'll need to, because remember, your staff meetings, usually if you're going to run them maybe twice a month, or twice a month is usually pretty good for everybody to catch up on what needs to be caught up on. If you find yourself that you need to run them more frequently, again, you can look at some of the options where you can look at one of those places, those public places where you can meet, have a very brief meeting, and then exit the meeting. Now, if you're looking at having confidential, you're going to discuss confidential information, then you have to look at places that are a little bit more secured, because you cannot discuss client personal information or confidential information out in a public space. So you can look at options such as renting out a small look at your local business center, like the small business center here locally around town. They usually have little small meeting rooms that you can rent out, very inexpensive, that you can rent out for a short period of time, and then that way you can discuss more personal information, because it gives you a closed conference room, and they're usually designated that time just strictly for you and what you signed up for, and you're able to talk a little bit more freely in a confidential area that's deemed a safe environment, because it is a boardroom or a conference room that you will actually be holding this meeting in. Or the second thing is also now with the with virtual offices, you can look for virtual offices that are around in your area, and with those virtual offices, then they usually have some of the options where you can request a meeting space, and in that meeting space they usually have like a conference room, a private conference room. You just have to find out where they're located within your city, a little conference room where you can rent out for the day, and that you will be able to discuss a little bit more personal things in those meetings. So with that being said, that brings me to the end of the tips that I have for you, because I don't want to keep you too long. Let me just check and make sure. Okay, I just have to check and make sure that I didn't have any comments that come in. So that brings me to the end, because I don't like to run it too long when I'm just giving you the tips, because I do like to be considerate of your time. But that in a nutshell is looking at the two different models, and when you're trying to determine whether you need to look at a home-based office or whether you can look at a commercial base. And just keep in mind that for that particular state, your regulatory agency is going to be the one that really has the final say so on whether that particular office has to be zoned as a commercial leased space, so that way they can have access to this particular business because of the level of security and because of the risk that's involved with this business. It needs to be more openly, so that a regulatory agency can have access to that information a little bit more frequently, or as needed. So it's going to vary by state, and most of the time the business model that is going to require that commercial model is going to be your non-skilled home health agency. So that is about as long as I'm going to keep you today. I want to thank you once again for your views, getting the word out there, spread the word. And on next Thursday, which will be June the 30th, I believe, you can check the Demetrius Dowdell Success Academy Facebook page, but I will send out notification. We will be going over, and we will have a Q&A question for the assisted living facilities. So if you know someone that's interested in starting an assisted living facility, and they want to get their questions answered. They need just some, help on which way to go and point them in the right direction on how to get their assisted living facility started. Next Thursday, we will be discussing assisted living facilities. So if you spread the word, just help me out. Spread the word, spread the word, spread the word, spread the word. So that way, anyone that's interested in getting that started, they definitely can come on here and be able to get their questions answered. I would like to thank you as usual for your time. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And like I said, I really want you to be successful in your business. I want you to be able to get your business started. I want you to grow. And as usual, I will see you on the next live. I love you, and just remember, I want you to grow. I want you to be successful. Until next time, be great, and I look forward to seeing you on the next live. Have a good one.